So, we've talked a lot today, very much inspecting our navels to a certain extent, looking inwardly. And I think with this panel, we want to start looking a bit more outward from the party to look at how we expect politics to develop in the future as we look at the wider world beyond the SDP itself. So we've got 3 speakers. We were to have 4 speakers, but unfortunately one is not able to join us because he's not very well. So I will introduce them with very short introductions. You can find them and find their fantastic CVs elsewhere. So first of all, we have Craig Houston, who probably may be an unfamiliar face to you on the panel. He is our new leader in Scotland, and we're delighted to have him here. I should say he has driven here and he is driving back at the end of the conference, so he has really put in a lot of effort to be here with us, and we're really, really pleased he's able to be here. Then we have Yvonne Wilding, who probably a more familiar face.
Hi.
To everybody. Stood as an SDP candidate for Mid-Buckinghamshire, was it?
Mid-Bucks, yeah. Tory heartland.
So we will then hear what she has to say. And then we have Rod Liddle, SDP candidate for Middlesbrough South and...
East Cleveland.
East Cleveland, thank you.
More words than votes I got.
Who is going to give some initial response to our first 2 speakers, and then we will come out to you. We have till 16:40, so if we keep responses brief, that will be really helpful. So, Yvonne, shall we start with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Well, absolute pleasure to be here and delighted to be on the platform. The general election was my first venture into politics. I had not been really political before, but it was a huge privilege to represent the party. And I didn't get many votes, but it was an absolute thrill, and I loved every moment of it. What I've come to the SDP by a route that may not be common with many of you. I'm a very ex-angry Conservative voter, walked away from the party in utter disgust, and then tried to find something that would feel like a proper home for me to go to. I haven't always been a Conservative voter. I grew up in a working class family with strongly Labour parents. But the Labour Party that I grew up with at that time was nothing like the Labour Party that you see today. It was a Labour Party that allowed kids to build this belief that if you worked hard and studied and did well, you could excel and progress in society. And I think it's because of the Labour Party that I'm actually here today and quite successful in my profession. I don't think that environment exists now. I think now people believe that they don't necessarily have to work for everything, that sometimes they have a right to everything. And if they can't get it themselves, they'll put their hands out to the state and try and claim it in many cases. And unfortunately, a lot of people will go out and steal it if they can't acquire it by legal means. So I think the way we found our society today is really quite dispiriting. And I think the SDP potentially offers a solution to a better society. So the thing is about coming at the end of these presentations, you find that the points you want to say have already been said a number of times. And I wanted to talk about what might make the SDP relevant for the future in politics. The car crash that currently is British politics. I think the Labour Party will be lucky to last their term, quite frankly, the way they're going at the moment. The Conservatives are in disarray, and the Liberals, I wouldn't even dare to mention the Liberals. So I think there is huge opportunity for the SDP if we can muster our forces to be extremely influential going forward. But there were 3 points I wanted to make. And the first one has been said a lot by a number of people, and that's visibility. As an ex-Tory, I stumbled across the SDP, and I stumbled across the SDP in an article that was written by Mr. Liddle, in which he said he was raising funds for the SDP. Now, not knowing if he was totally serious, I Googled SDP to try and find out what on earth it was. So the first thing I found was that the SDP is a supplier development programme, a society of decision professionals, and a society of depreciation professionals. And I couldn't really understand why any of those might be relevant to what he was trying to raise funds for. But when I eventually found the right information, I read the policies and it immediately felt like it fitted my values. But this is the key point. If the SDP was invisible to me, it's invisible to most of the UK population. If we want to make any impact on the political scene going forward, we have to be much more visible than we are now. So my second point has been covered extensively today, and that was about community engagement. Hilary's spoken a lot about this. Many of you are actively involved in community groups and local and county councils. People will judge this party on what they see you doing and how you behave. By having more councillors around the decision-making table, we have an opportunity to stand up to some of the nonsense that happens around us. I've joined a local council, and it's actually quite interesting. Always having worked in the private sector, when you join a council, it's a bit like somebody handing you a novel and then turning it upside down. So you can't really understand any of it to start with, and it makes no sense. But gradually you learn how to twist things so you can interpret what's going on. And eventually, after a bit of perseverance, you find you can start to make a difference. So I would encourage all of you to get out there and have a go. Even if you think I can't do it, you probably can. And you'll probably enjoy it once you get used to it. So Bucks is heavily ruled by the Conservatives, both our MP and a mass of Bucks councillors. Individually, they're all probably decent people. But when they've got no conflicting opinions, the sheep mentality tends to kick in, and they make some rather strange decisions. So I would urge for those of you who do have an opportunity and the slightest inclination, go for it. And in May, I'll be trying for Bucks Council. I may not get in, but at least it gives the SDP some more publicity. So all we need to do is to tell people what we're doing and engage with your communities. Just get out there and talk to people. Final point is influence. We may not have any MPs, but we are strongly linked to public opinions. We listen to people and we hear their concerns and shape policies that resonate. Our members shape policies. We don't have any secret cabals. And although we may not be changing UK law here and now, our values and ideas are listened to by the other parties. A lot of people will vote strictly on party lines. In Buckinghamshire, we had a reform candidate who turned up to nothing, was on none of the leaflets, and ended up with 6,000 votes, which was an utter nonsense. But people will see you and they will see what you do. And our activities will influence people. Similarly, our policies, if they're good and sound, will be pinched, as we've seen they've been pinched by other parties. So we shouldn't give up on that. We should keep developing good core policies and spread that into the broad political environment. So that was all I had to say, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Yvonne. Craig, you're going to do a Sebastian, I think, aren't you?
Sorry?
You're going to do a Sebastian.
I'm going to stand up. The reason I'm going to stand down here is not as noble as Sebastian's. It's because my legs are sore. I've been driving all the way down here from Glasgow. I've sat there for hours and I'm cramped up. So I'd rather stand here than be on any podium, if that's okay. And I also feel like a bit of an imposter, if I'm honest, because I've heard a lot of students of politics today speak far better than I could, because I am a mere student of people. And I believe that's where I can help this party, and particularly in Scotland. I've been on this planet for 51 years, and I've just realised today I'm a weirdo. And I don't mind that, to be perfectly honest with you. But thinking back to my previous, in my youth, I must be a born-again weirdo, because I have been weird at other times in my life. And I didn't mind that either. So what can I offer the party, and how do I think the party can connect to these people? Well, I'll tell you a few stories about my previous life in sales, predominantly in sales, which might give you an idea of where I see myself in this party. And The first one, it was 25 years in the motor trade. And I didn't learn too much in that industry, but I learned one thing, and that was Henry Ford was quite good at building motor cars. And he said something that I didn't hear it. I was obviously, for the first time, I wasn't there at the time. But it was many Ford meetings this came up. And Henry Ford once famously said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you'll probably be right. And I think this party could do a bit of that. Because I hear a lot of, we're this size and we shouldn't be growing and all this stuff, and that's not me. I want to be up here. Do I believe I can get to Holyrood? Yes, I do. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't waste my time. So that was the first lesson from the motor trade. Another lesson I learned, not through my own convictions, but knowing people who had issues in life. They were taught how to deal with their issues, and that was addiction issues. And they were taught a great prayer. And you don't need to be godly to benefit from this or have addictions. And what they were told was, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the wisdom to change the things I can, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I just take that into my working life, and I'll take that into my SDP life, regardless of my feelings on how to sort addiction problems or God. So that's what you'll get from me. And I don't know if I'll do it or not, but I believe I will. And what I do believe, I am the buzz guy that Valerie talks about. But being that buzz guy in 18 months should put me and some of my colleagues into Holyrood. And then I need to commit for another 5 years. So I'll be both, if that's okay. So guys, what I'll promise to you is, I'll see you next year, and I'll see you the next year after. When I come back here in 2 years, I'll have a wee MSP title after my name, and I guarantee I'll have some colleagues with me. Yes. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Craig. Rod.
Millwall, Rangers and Glentoran, mate. That's the future.
Don't like the Glens, mate. I'm a blues man.
Yeah, thanks. That was Wayne, I assume, was it? I'm doing a speech in a few minutes' time. I don't want to kind of give it all away. But a couple of things to say first. One of the things we were talking about earlier, which I've heard a lot about, is raising money, which is obviously vital. And I could bore you at great length. I'll bore you a little bit about the number of times Will and I have got the train down to London and endured these appalling sessions with rich bastards. And there was one guy who had a Velasquez in his downstairs Kazi. And we thought, just give us that, mate. That'll do. You know, we can flog that. And we would leave. And people are rich. People become rich because they don't give their money away. You know? So these were often flawed adventures. And Will and I would escape to the local pub and sit there drowning our sorrows when we'd failed to get it, or failed to nail them down with anything. One guy offered us £1 million, but said it was only under the condition it was anonymous, which we can't do, of course, under the electoral rules. And yet, when the election came around, when it was declared, two of the people we'd been snivelling around in a most oleaginous manner, I ought to add, stumped up, did they not? We got 25, 30 grand straight in the kitty, which enabled us to do a lot more than we would have done. So actually being servile and acting like a whore does work. Occasionally, though I wouldn't like you to witness us doing it. And we will continue doing it. We will continue being servile and acting like whores to anyone rich enough to fall within our ambit. The second thing, I mean, what I was going to be talking about later was uncannily reflects the views of this party almost exactly in what we've heard today, which is that we must become more radical and attack the Labour Party from the left. And everybody seems to be of that opinion. I would just add one caveat to what I was going to say, which is don't give up. on identity politics and its odiousness. Because I would guess that many people here today joined the SDP because they found the absurdities of identity politics, of critical race theory, of the terrible mess that our politicians get themselves in when they are faced with the inordinate problem of deciding what a woman is. That those are the reasons that many of you may have joined in the first place. And simply to say that reform can always outflank us on this issue, it's not quite true, because reform is a mess. It is an ideological, incoherent, inchoate mess. They are at heart, the people who lead reform, libertarians. Their actual opposition to most of the stuff of identity politics is purely opportunistic. It is not rooted there in their belief systems in the same way that it is with us where we believe in faith, community, nation state, the family. Identity politics acts against all of those. It's divisive and corrosive, but more than anything else, it's also on the way out. I don't think there's much doubt about this. I think particularly on the transgender issue, we've reached that, I think it's 43 degrees, the tipping point where the avalanche comes. When you get weaselly little politicians like Sebastian Coe suddenly changing his mind and saying, yeah, I think it's probably better if biological women compete against women in Olympic sports. When you get him making that change, you can see that the whole tenor of the argument is changing. And I think it will be, I don't think it will be long, probably around about the time when the first real tranche of action suits come in against the Tavistock Clinic. I think that argument is well on the way to being won, and we shouldn't give up on it and stop talking about it, because it's nice sometimes to be on the winning side. The other thing, of course, the race issue, I think, is far more problematic for a whole number of reasons, and is far, far less likely to be won in the short term. But the notion that you all, if you are white, should apologise for your existences, that you are in some way culpable for slavery, that you should teach your children that they should apologise for their existences, is something which rankles like hell with the vast majority of people in this country, black and white. And however radical we become on the left, and we should, we must never give up that battle, because it's crucial to what we believe in as a party, and we have the entire population on our side. That's it.